All right. It says we're live. We'll get it a minute or so to get going here. And then I'll
Hello,
introduce. We have a
everybody.
few viewers on. Introduce yourselves in the chat. We've got Linda Blade here live. We'll get started in just a little bit. I'm in my car traveling today. Always on the go. Looking forward to this
She's
chat.
always in her car. Yeah.
We've got a few viewers. Where are you at? Let us know. Introduce yourselves in the chat. Miranda was here early saying that she couldn't wait for this.
Aw.
That
Hi,
Linda's
Miranda.
a sensible, knowledgeable, and brave Canadian woman.
Oh, I love it. Hi, Miranda.
I agree.
Miranda's my favorite librarian.
Oh, okay, great. Did she stock your book? That's the question. Did she stock your book?
Oh yeah, she's doing her best to do that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
Love it. So we'll just get rolling here. Beth Stelzer, founder of Save Women Sports, live with Linda Blade. You can ask us anything, or else we're going to be talking about her book, her coming down to the U.S., to Atlanta, all sorts of fun stuff tonight. Let's start out with Atlanta, Linda. Why was this Canadian woman down in Atlanta protesting with me?
Well, I was a NCAA athlete, full scholarship.
I'm not sure many people realize that, right?
Yeah. I was this little girl from British Columbia in Canada on the West Coast, and I got recruited to a Division I university. And by the third year, I was team captain, University of Maryland, and All-American. I was a podium athlete. I got third in the heptathlon. And so I had such a wonderful experience. And, you know, I was in kind of the first or probably the second generation of Title IX recipients in terms of got my scholarship in 1980. And of course, Title IX had already been active since 73. So probably first, second, third generation Title IX, but it was still fairly new in those days. And I felt so appreciative of, you know, just being able to get my education. It bettered me as an athlete because of the competition. I mean, you just can't get the kind of, like, people come from all over the world to attend the NCAA schools. So I got to compete, and really it was an international competition for me.
Yeah, their decisions ripple worldwide, don't they?
Yeah. And so for that reason, and then of course I was down there visiting, my parents were on holiday, and I went down to Florida to have holiday with them. And all of a sudden I get this call from this lady named Beth Stelzer saying, "Can you maybe come to Atlanta? We're protesting." And I'm like, "Well, I can maybe take one day out of my holiday." And I was happy to
and
do
we're
it,
so
Beth,
grateful that you did. It was so fun, and your speech was amazing.
Well, thank you. It was
we
sort
can
of
put
like
a link to it in the chat here after we're done live.
Yeah.
I'll add that in there. It was so great.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a few lines from it? Can you?
Well, I was saying, really, I was listening to some of the other speakers, and I thought, you know, this really boils down to the fact that, you know, it's easy in 2022, or it's kind of disingenuous in 2022 to pretend like nobody knows what a woman is. But they certainly knew what a woman is when we weren't allowed to work way back in the 1800s, and we weren't allowed to own property. They knew what a woman was back then. They knew what a woman was when we weren't allowed to vote, and we had to fight for that. And then they knew what a woman was when we weren't allowed to do all these Olympic sports in the Olympic movement. And even, like I was making the point, they knew what a woman was when they said women weren't allowed to do the marathon until, imagine, 1984. That was already near the end of my university time. So to get to 2022 and then pretend like nobody really knows what a woman is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and especially in the United States here, that's quite the controversy lately. What is a woman? And it's so absurd that we are in this point. If we all just spoke up and spoke the truth, we wouldn't be here. But thankfully, there are women like you and me that are holding the line. And as you said before, this is the hill you will die on.
It is, because we can't go anywhere after this. I mean, our backs are against the wall in women's sports. If men are allowed to join women's sports, we really have nowhere else to go except maybe leave and start our own leagues or something. But in the current system of sports, we either have to have female only sport or we won't be involved, because the male athletes will just accumulate, even though they say there's so few men who identify as women and all this, but more and more people are coming, up through the ranks. And so, like, we saw what's happening in the USA in the high schools. And we're just kidding ourselves if we think there's not going to be more Leah Thomases. There will be, and the more that come along, the more women will be disenfranchised. And really, for me as a Canadian as well, the double jeopardy in a sense is that I think Americans don't understand what happens in the USA tends to happen and get used as precedent in other countries. And I think the Canadians are looking at this and sort of taking their cues as well. And so I've got to fight for the rights of female athletes up here in Canada. And it's very instructive to attend an event like that in Atlanta. And thanks to you, it was amazing protests. Beth, you were just a superstar getting everything organized. I know it was hard on you, because it was hard, but it was taxing. But the truth is, I think you see how you can tell us. I mean, every major, legacy media company just started talking about it where they were ignoring it before. So you really pushed the limit. And I need to see, like, it's important for people to be there on the ground to actually notice things and to understand where the activism, where they get their support, and also where the activists, where their logic breaks down. And so I found it to be a very instructive day.
Yeah, it was incredible. We had really good interaction with the opposition too. We might add, like, that energy was negative at first, of course, but there was some really good discourse, and we might have even started changing some minds, and also to see the energy from parents being a little shy and maybe like subtle thumbs up or smiles when they walked by, to like yanking the stickers out of our hands and shouting "Save Women Sports" with us. And it was really great. We just went down there with a mission, with a few people, because I had been really ill. I kind of kept that out of the loop and didn't even know if we could pull this off. So I'm really impressed with the team that came together and the media coverage we were able to get. And we're just getting started with this action team. And you can join us with that on savewomensports.com/action-team. You can see all the cool press that we got from Atlanta. And if you scroll down to the bottom, sign up, and we'll let you know the next time we're going to be doing some boots on the ground work. And we'd love to have you holding a sign next to us next time. But that'll be a secret location until now. I'll just let you know we've got something really big planned for the fall. So
that's really great. That's
hopefully
super.
We'll get Linda back in the USA for that and getting some sunshine.
I love that USA sunshine in Canada. Today it's even snowing in Edmonton, so I'm very jealous of you down there, and especially my mom and dad down in Florida.
Well, it's still pretty chilly in Minnesota. It's still 10-20 degrees or so, and getting some flurries. So I hear you there. It was fun to go to Atlanta and have the sunshine. Although I have to give a shout out to our team. It was not sun shining all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Friday, we ran into substantial rain. Luckily, we had some umbrellas with us, but those ladies stood out in the rain, letting everyone know that exited, that their girls mattered. And it was a really awesome thing to see. And I think that really meant a lot to the parents and the athletes.
Yes. It's so interesting that, like, I was there the first day and the first prelims. And then when that was the same day, Leah won the 500-yard freestyle. And I was actually sitting next to Kelly J. Keene when she had that argument with Skylar Baylor, because the tickets that we got, we went in there and we noticed, of course, Beth, you had it so that we could be scattered about. And but there were so many people not in their seats, and
it wasn't as full as I thought, because it's only kind of the parents of the event happening at the time that are in there. It's not like everybody that had their tickets was in there.
That's right.
So we were able to move around a little bit and get some better seats or sit next to each other.
The context of how Kelly J got her amazing viral little shots there is that, she should have originally been way up in the top part of the stands. And she and I were kind of hanging out around down at the main walkway there. And we saw like the VIP seating area, which is sort of right up against the rail. And of course, it was full of the trans activists. So, NC2A is so disingenuous. They give the trans activists the front row seats. And that's why Skylar Baylor was just sitting there. And so when Posey and I, like when we walked in, and just sat down on a random seat, we just happened to be sitting right behind Skylar Baylor. And that's when Kelly J just started arguing. And, I noticed like both she and I, we didn't really yell out too much before the race, only because the prelims were happening and we really didn't want to get kicked out before actually seeing
before the good race. Show, right?
But she was having a very spirited, as you can see, conversation. The one that's where she said, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. And I was just like, oh, that's a great line. I was sitting next to her on the left thinking, oh man, she's so good at this stuff.
And then she ran out and got a t-shirt made with it.
Exactly.
And then got in another.
My mom, Isla Spence.
I love it. Hey, shout out to Isla, one of my first supporters, and a bigger rock than Linda even in my life.
She is. She's like rock solid.
She is a ride or die fan. Linda's mom, Isla, shout out. We love you.
She's such a, she's like, well, it's your holiday, but you better get to Atlanta. You better get there.
I love it. And remember when we first met for the first time in Washington, D.C. a few years ago to be at a press conference for SCOTUS. And your parents came, and it was sweet. And she had on one of my first ever Save Women Sports shirts.
Never biology.
Forget it. Yes.
Team biology. Well, I had team biology. No, wait a minute. Was that later? Anyway, I had the suit on that day. But she and my dad always is just so kind, and he sits there and he brings his lawn chair and he sat at the behind, like sort of at the edge of the crowds and watched all the activity. And my mom's right in there arguing with everybody. So Isla Spence, I love you. You're my mama. You're just a fighter. 85 years old and fighting. I love it. And
helping us keep going.
Yeah, she's the number one fan, and I really do honor her and admire her greatly. She's fought her whole life, and so she just won't give up on this, and it really bothers her a lot because she's seen how much women have had to work. So she really admires you, Beth.
I love it.
Yeah.
We've come a long ways.
Yeah. So. The only thing I was going to say too is that as far as Skylar Baylor, I actually happened to have a conversation with a mom who was at the Ivies. So that wasn't in Atlanta. This was in the Ivies before, like at the Ivy League championships. And you know how when we were going in, they were searching our bags for security. Well, apparently, since the Ivy League is so woke, the parents that were going in, they were searching their purses and bags and asking to see their signs, even to see if they had the appropriate signs. Like the Ivy League was really, really strict. And so, and the mom is going like, are you kidding me? You're searching to see if my sign is okay. That's what you're doing, right? And then the guards kind of just laughed. So what made her mad was when they got into the Ivies, then Skylar Baylor was sitting there right in front, of course, always gets the front row seat, the trans activist, and just took a shell off her. And she had the whole trans rights are like trans women are women shirt. Like they're allowed to have all the signage and all the, promotional and marketing material, and all the people who want to speak on behalf of women and girls get shut down. Like it's not even a fair fight as far as the messaging.
No, you're so right. And even in Atlanta, when I was with my big flag, I shortly was told to put that away, but that someone in that front row who happened to be a man in a dress was able to hold their trans pink, white, and blue flag the whole time.
That's the point. That was like the VIP section for the trans activists, right in front.
I'm sick of people saying things like, where are the feminists or where are the women? We're here. We're being blacklisted. We're being canceled. We're being blocked. It's ridiculous. But now we've busted into the mainstream. They can't ignore us, and they certainly can't cancel us all. So if we all start speaking up, I think things are really going to start to change. The tide has turned. For a while, I think we were feeling like the tide was going to turn,
Like
but
people
I
weren't
think it
noticing.
has. I think as sad as it was when Leah Thomas won that championship, we also won, though, because then we broke through to the average person to understanding what this threat to women's sports actually can be with this Division I title being swooped up.
Right. And just even the fact, even like so many activists and people arguing on Twitter now saying, well, you didn't win all the races. Well, I don't know whether we can actually say that Leah was sandbagging, but it's easy to not try. Like, and also, even if Leah was trying, the fact that they can be, they're like ranked 400 or 500 in the men's and then suddenly get into the final of a women's final, it still shows you they have an advantage. It doesn't mean that they have to win everything. I think that's just a red herring argument. Like, it's just that the way people argue, they've got no logical reasons. Like, this is what really amazes me. Remember that first time that when we met in Washington, D.C. for the Supreme Court protest in 2019, it was amazing. Like, they tried to infiltrate our group, and it was amazing, Beth, how when you really talk to them and just have a calm conversation, although some of them were just yelling through megaphones, but
yeah, they were screaming at us, go home homophobe, like really, like right up in our faces with megaphones. It was ridiculous. So
it was so ridiculous.
Security.
Oh, and remember that guy? So the one guy was trying to, like, so we had our circle of women in front of the Supreme Court, and then we were all sort of listening to each other's speeches, and these trans activists and this guy tries to break through, and we're in like this really circle so he can be in the front yelling at the podium. And I just kind of had my elbows out to the side against, like, all those ladies were kind of blocking them out. And he keeps pushing and shoving into me in the back. He's pushing me in the back, trying to get through, and I'm just like standing my ground. And all of a sudden he goes, police, look what she's doing to me. She's hurting me. Like, so then he pushed me some more, and police. Like, it was the fact that they would behave like such wimps and just such liars. Like, it was hilarious, but it also helped me to lose my fear of them. They're just so ridiculous. And when you have even just a normal, even those were the crazy ones, but even if you have the normal conversations, I mean, they have no arguments. It's all about their feelings. Like, it's just, I've been looking for 3 or 4 years now, Beth, for somebody to give me a solid argument. Just give me a solid argument why men should be competing with women. Like, give me one, right? And it's all emotions or hurt feelings,
right,
or whatever. Right. It has really, they have no arguments. Yeah. So
sorry about the noise and me wiggling around. I had to emergency get plugged my laptop in, so I had to get my inverter plugged into my battery.
Well, we don't want your laptop to run out.
We're not dying now. We saved it with 7% to go. So
well, no, but the thing is, I guess what I was just going to say, and then there was a third category of people when they protest, and it's the person who walks around with their phone, like they're filming everything you say as if, oh, I'm going to catch you and cancel you. And it's like, it's a way of trying to intimidate us, So did you notice they were doing that the other day? I mean, like, always with the phone. Of course, we had our phones too at that point, but back in 2019, it was just so obvious what they were trying to do. They're just every time they'd be trying to talk to me, and they'd have the phone right up so they could catch a turf in a lie or something.
Right. Well, but if you know your facts and you're truthful to yourself, I mean, there's nothing they can do. What are they going to call you, transphobic? Well, we know we don't have an irrational fear of trans people.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, in fact, I'm less afraid of them now that I've seen how ridiculous they are.
Right. And I feel like the stronger I get, and the more I don't wished, the death threats have slowed down, and all they have is like attacking my physical appearance or silly shit like that. They have no argument, like you said.
There is no argument there. We
just stand our ground and Yeah.
and that's
Why
why
should they compete, and what is a woman? Those are the two questions you can pretty much shut down anybody's debate with when it comes to this.
Yeah. Well, and then so when we get to the idea of like, my national organization, Canada, just before I went to the US, they finally, after 3 years of working on some policy issue or some policy document for transgender in Canadian track and field, our governing body nationally and from Ottawa was, like they dropped the email came with the draft policy that we now have to discuss. And I have to just read you this thing. Like, it's the worst. Like, this is worse than the NCAA. This one is like, other than international competitions, if it's any domestic competition of any age, even if it's adults or any age, teenagers, any single sex event based, an athlete at a domestic competition should be able to participate in any single sex event based on their gender with which they identify. And when they register, and it's for that day, like whatever they identify that day, like there's no mitigating anything. And in registering for a domestic competition, an athlete may select the category that best reflects their gender identity and sense of self in that moment.
Wow.
And then on top of that, coaches, officials, staff, and volunteer must support an athlete's right to select a competitive category that best matches their identity, their gender identity. And we're not allowed to say anything. And you know what's so hilarious about that is that, well, it's not hilarious, pathetic. The fact is that we've just spent, well, first of all, 15 years, as you recall, Beth, in the school systems and in sports systems, talking about no bullying. So don't bully people. So this is bullying of women, essentially. And even if we would have a male who identifies as a woman in a man's race, we have all the rules that the men won't bully that person. So we've spent 15 years trying to develop our no bullying policy. And then on top of that, in the last 5 years, we've had a number of cases where it turned out that coaches were sexually abusing some of the female athletes. So we've had this whole 5 years of safe sport where we have to have such careful safeguards between male coaches and female athletes and everything. And now they're saying, well, anybody can identify as anything they want. So it goes completely against the safe sport that we've actually been working on
It's
for
absolutely
the last 5
ridiculous.
years. I mean, think about it. Even like the chaperones, like a 42-year-old dad could say, well, as we've seen, like suddenly identify as, AGP or whatever as a woman, and suddenly be the female chaperone for the girls' team.
There's so many aspects to just one little policy that people often don't realize. But I think that lack of knowledge is breaking now. But I did hear more about policy news. USA Powerlifting, which is a federation that I lifted with, made some of the first rules to protect female athletes.
Yes.
Was recently booted out of the International Powerlifting Federation.
Really?
And the replacement organization, I think it's called American Powerlifting. Don't quote me on that. But I just saw that JC Cooper was allowed to register as a woman there. So they will be allowing powerlifting up into the international level. And when that becomes an Olympic sport, they will be, it's just ridiculous to think that. And powerlifting of all sports. But anyway, I want to backtrack here. We have a question that I would really like to answer. I'm going to throw it up on the screens. Greetings from Cali. We'd like to know your thoughts on people that use she, her to describe trans women, i.e. Leah Thomas. It seeds the debate. People think you're talking about some kind of woman. I absolutely agree that we have to put our foot down when it comes to language and not use preferred pronouns and use proper pronouns, because the conflation of language is part of the issue of how we got here. You're right. Some people often think they definitely, when you use the word trans women, are assuming they've had surgical procedures and aren't an intact male anymore. And we know that from even self-reported studies, the vast majority have no intent of having, quote, bottom surgery.
Yeah.
So I agree with Mrs. Shorty Lyon. How about you, Linda?
Well, okay, so I am. If you read my op-ed as a response to Lucas Draper's op-ed in Swim World, I didn't use the pronouns at all. I used this LT, like the initials. The problem I run into, and here, as you were giving out this book, so thank you for giving out the book that Barbara Kay and I wrote.
Yeah, let's stop and pause on that. While we were
Yeah.
outside in Atlanta protesting for those 3 days, we had over 100 copies of Linda's book that we distributed to swimmers and their parents and coaches. It was awesome. So
Thank
shout out
you.
also to Rebel News, your publisher, for helping us out with getting the books here on time.
Yeah, Rebel News, Ezra Levant. Thank you so much for publishing the book. And in this book, you'll notice that I did use the pronouns, but with a little bit of a symbol. If I said her, like Rachel McKinnon, her, I had to do a symbol. But the problem is, in Canada, it's the law. So I mean, I wouldn't even have been allowed to publish the book in Canada without using the pronouns. So what I had to do is set up a system of pronouns where it did sound or look like her, but with a little umlaut, like a little hat. I forget what you call that, but it's
Because
a
in
little bit of
Canada,
a.
you don't have the same rights as we do in
No,
America,
we
too.
don't.
You kind of
We
had to
don't
watch
have
your
free
back,
speech in
and that's
Canada.
why you
Yeah.
did that. Correct.
Yeah.
Is
And so, I've had some criticism about that, and I accept it completely. We should never use, I mean, properly, I'd like to use biology-based pronouns. And I think at some point, we're going to get to the point where maybe what we could do, and I wish we could do it in Canada, is just say, look, if for the purpose of this conversation, my speech is biology based, period. I could just use the pronouns that match the biology that I believe in, because it turns out that this is basically a belief system. Like when I
correct.
have to argue in the room for our sports policy, it's really clear that some people, their legitimate belief, I don't know how they do it, but it's a belief system that if a guy declares that he's a woman, he must be a woman. Like that takes so much faith. That's just like, it's just an article of belief. And
And how do we measure that? It's not
and that's not my
quantifiable.
religion. Like that's not my
Right.
religion. My religion is something else, and I use other language for my religion or my ideology, which is soundly based in biology. And I think this is the clash that's happening, because in Canada they have these new laws that, put gender identity into the Human Rights Code, which is fine, but it doesn't mean we have to accommodate them in women's spaces. We shouldn't mean that. It just, like in prisons, for example, shouldn't mean that a violent offender, male offender, man gets put into a woman's prison just because he says he's a woman. They could put him in a wing of the men's prison and accommodate him some other way. So my point is, and that men are going to abuse that, because anytime a guy in the prison and a max prison, the max for women is a little more lenient. So of course they'd want to become a woman. Why wouldn't they? So I'm just saying that I guess I shouldn't really say it's actually a religion, but it's based in, my truth is based in biology as far as sport is concerned. And they have to have a belief system that believes otherwise. And I can't see how they have no evidence for it. That's a problem.
Exactly. They're telling us they have all the science that backs them up. Well, where?
Where is
Excuse
it?
me.
We
That's why it
keep
was really
asking.
interesting to have Colin write down at the press conference and
Yes.
interacting with some of the opposition. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no arguing with the facts. It's all right there, and he's published half of it.
You know what? Colin made a super point. And by the way, thank you for bringing Colin in, because it was such a thrill and an honor to meet Colin. But one of the things that I noticed that he said, not only in his speech, but when he went across the street to talk to the activists, and he was kind of very calmly making the point that one of them had a sign that said, "We support trans in sport." Well, he said, "Well, so do we. We support trans in sport." And he said the way that we prove that is that we have never had a single day we had a problem with Isaac Hennig being in the women's races. Isaac Hennig is a female born swimmer who identifies as a male, as a man, and still chooses to swim with the women, which happens a lot. There's a lot more trans like men
and he did
women.
she happened to beat Leah in one of the
Yeah, I
races.
mean, I think
And
that
I
was
want to
even a
bring
bit
up the
staged.
point that Save Women's Sports fully supports Isaac's right to compete as a woman as long as she's not taking testosterone. And it
Exactly.
was the
Not
rumor on the
doping.
street from the parents that there was absolutely no drug testing done at the NCAA championships.
Yeah.
So that means Leah wasn't tested, Isaac wasn't
Yeah.
tested. This is
That,
absolute a
yeah,
farce that they're trying
it's
to
a
pull
farce.
over on us.
See, that's the thing that's going to happen here, like too, is that's why Canadian sports now saying, well, we won't even require anything because we just don't have the money to test everybody all the time. And I mean, well, all the more reason why you should just keep them separated according to their biology. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I still have to argue these points. You know, it's just gonna. I don't know. I think the AGM's in June, and we're probably going to have a vote. And the only chance I have is to try to convince the other presidents of the other provinces to vote no on the policy because it's going to create havoc. I'm telling you, it's going to create havoc. And all of our officials, so many of our officials are volunteers. I can't see some of them, wanting to continue. Just like in the U.S., Cynthia resigned, right?
Cynthia
So
Millen, yeah, in USA Swimming.
yeah. And so there's going to be officials resigning, and it's just hard. It's hard for everybody. And I don't know. I just think that we're causing so many problems just to accommodate a very small percentage, and it's not true anyway. And anyway, being in Atlanta really did encourage me, and it helped me understand, even though it's depressing to see Leah Thomas winning. But my hope is that from now on, the NCAA is maybe at this point they're going to be willing to support USA swimming rules. I don't know. What do you think, Beth?
I don't know what to think from them. I think they're going to constantly pander to the money and to this ideology until we get a strong enough voice. And I think that's going to take swimmers sitting out or athletes sitting out or, a more mass movement than just what our grassroots team can do out on the street. It has to get bigger. People have to start speaking up. And it's going to take every level of that, from keyboard warrior, writing emails, to having those real tough conversations with family, friends, administration on the local level, talking to legislators. There's so much you can do to get involved, and we all have to start speaking the truth because, like I said before, they can't cancel us all.
So Miranda, I see a question from Miranda whether there's any point in writing officials. So here's the thing. When it comes to the vote, no, like the officials in competitions, they just come up along when there's a competition and they play a role as far as that day. But the officials that we need to be in touch with is the members of the sports, like in my case, track and field. If an athlete or a parent or even an official is a member of track and field, they need to write to their state provincial president and say, please vote no on this thing. So the members themselves have to speak up and encourage their leaders from each of the provinces to vote no at the national meeting, because it's only the presidents of each of the provinces that vote. So I'm just hoping that we have enough provincial leaders that see the truth, and maybe Leah Thomas has really helped to open their eyes as to what catastrophe could befall women in Canada in sports if we don't stand up pretty soon and just say, this is ridiculous. We can't do this. And there can be other accommodations. I mean, we have to safeguard women's sports. That's our top priority. Anything, if you want to add extra sections after that or whatever you want to do, it's a different conversation. But we have to have at least one category, sports category, dedicated to the female athlete, right? And
ultimately, this comes down to not being an anti-trans or anti-Leah movement. It's pro-women and girls. And it just comes down to protecting women and
let's
girls.
protect, and let's have one category that is dedicated specifically to the female athlete. And that's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. You can do anything you want after that with other categories, whatever you want.
Exactly. I'm running out of light here. I wasn't expecting to be traveling when I scheduled this live stream. So I just want to open up to see if anybody has any more questions. Please throw that in the chat and we will get those answered quickly. In the meantime, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Save Women's Sports on YouTube. Helps us out greatly. We've got some new merch stocked. Awareness kits that you can have, like basically a protest in a box. You know that a male is competing in a female sport next to you. We'll hook you up.
Yeah.
And we've got more of these cool singlets coming. Oh, I can't even get my camera to work. To say Save Women's Sports. And we also have now Linda's book directly from Save Women's Sports in our shop.
There you go. There it is. There it is. Thank you so much, Beth. I appreciate your support on that.
Thank yous in the chat.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to throw in?
Kim, Megan, Miranda, Fen. Love you guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I look forward to bringing more live streams your way, especially more with Linda Blade, because it is always a pleasure to chat with her. And I look forward to really growing Save Women's Sports bigger and better than ever, because we will win this. We won't back down. We won't compromise.
Do you feel more support? Do you feel more support since Atlanta?
Yeah, most definitely. It was overwhelming support. And it's just going to keep getting better and better. The phone calls. And I think we're going to have some athletes speaking up here soon. So that was really mission accomplished.
So, yeah, Jan says there's a moon probably going to rise behind your head there.
Yeah, it is getting late quick. All right. Well, thank you. Okay. We'll get some more live streams soon. Like I said, like and subscribe, or else thank you, Linda. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, love you guys. Thank you for attending.